Today we're lucky to have Edwin Kagin with us. For those of you who may not know Edwin, he's an attorney from Edwin, Kentucky. In addition to all that good stuff, he is a founder of Camp Quest. For those of you who know Amanda Metzkes, she's the executive director, now executive director of Camp Quest. Camp Quest is the first secular summer camp for kids of atheists, agnostics, humanists, etc. There are now, I believe, maybe 10 camps in the U.S. and expanding. He started here in Ohio. Yeah, and a couple overseas in England and Ireland as well. Edwin is also a founding member of the Free Inquiry Group in Cincinnati, and the former Kentucky State Director for American Atheists, and is now the National Legal Director for American Atheists. He is also a National Rifle Association certified handgun instructor, and he's here today to tell us a little about excuse me, a little bit about guns and the misconceptions we may have, and name my laptop and my screensaver. All of my Apple products are named after Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy characters. Sorry, it's a suit fest. I'll let you listen to Edwin, who's probably more coherent than I am.
Good afternoon, Senators. I'm really no more coherent than anyone, really friendly a lot less than most. It's an honor as usual to be here, and I want you to know that this talk to you today is not endorsed by American Atheists or anyone else. In fact, it's specifically I'm supposed to let you know as a disclaimer that the fact that I am National Legal Director for American Atheists does not in any way deal with their stand on gun control, because we don't have one. Our issue is separation of church and state, and we need to keep it that way. The National Rifle Association a few years ago started taking positions on abortion and various other things and immediately lost half their members. So they learned in a big hurry they better stay a one-issue organization or they're doomed. Another thing, I do not wish to talk to you today about gun control or whether guns should be banned. That's a subject I'll be very happy to come back for on another whole meeting. But in light of the tragedies in Arizona, not really tragedies, you know, people are asking, why are these people dead? Because a lunatic killed them, that's why they're dead. And as the Kentucky Supreme Court has observed, a gun is really no more responsible than a match is responsible for somebody created arson on your house. It is a tool, and this is what I want to talk to you about today. I have subtitled this Firearms for Liberals, assuming you know absolutely nothing whatsoever about them. How many of you ever shot a gun? Oh, not bad. Hey, how about that? Okay, all right. So, this, by the way, is Pam, my paralegal. We call her the paralegal. She just got herself a concealed carry permit. I feel remarkably overdressed for this occasion. You hear about the atheist funeral? If you haven't, I always use it. People haven't heard it. It says, here lies an atheist all dressed up and no place to go. Okay. All right. A firearm is a device, a mechanical device designed to fire shot or a solid projectile out of a tube, basically. Gunpowder was invented in China thousands of years ago, black powder. If you want to know how to make black powder, I'm going to tell you right now. It's very easy. 75% potassium nitrate, also known as saltpeter in some circles. 15% charcoal and 10% sulfur. Now you can grind these separately in a pestle, and then they're you read them on a line, you mix with water and maybe some alcohol and dry it out. You've got very good gunpowder. Now black powder burns and is explosive. Modern cartridges, which I'll get into, use what is known as smokeless powder, and they do not explode, they merely burn very rapidly. And in a confined area, let's see, I'm trying to do pictures here, but in a confined area, we can have a situation where the barrel is solid steel or whatever. The early ones were probably made out of wood or something, on them probably blew up. And they would put the powder down first and knock it down with a ramrod. Then they would ram a ball on top of that. And here I brought one. I'm not supposed to bring guns here, so I didn't. But I did bring this is what is known as a non-gun by the FTF, okay? This is a non-gun, this is a flintlock operating proposition. I'm gonna let you see it to give you an idea of how they work. Now, the first thing I want to tell you about is the rule of gun safety. There's one enormously important rule. Assume every gun is loaded. If you do that, nobody gets hurt and you don't accidentally shoot your friend in the face. I gave a talk on guns and gun safety at Camp Quest a few years ago. Every so often I said, don't shoot your friend in the face, and kids are walking around days later saying, don't shoot your friend in the face. I mentioned that because a couple of weeks later, Chady shot a friend in the face for basically not understanding how this works. Now, this is, in fact, a working replica of a flintlock dueling pistol. Now, what you did is you would take the black powder, and this is a ramrod that fits on here. You pour the powder in a measured amount there. You take a ball, which might have a greased rag around it to facilitate getting in, and you tap it down into the thing. You put the ramrod back in its place. All this takes time, to be sure. Then you cock this. This is called a cock, because many of them are shaped like roosters' heads. Here is called a pan. You put a little bit of the black powder in the pan, and there's a hole going from the pan into the back of the barrel called a touch hole or a flash hole. And the idea is to set off the black powder in the little pan, which you do by closing this down, which is called a frizzen. And if everything works right, and it's not raining, and the powder doesn't blow out, you know, you've heard the expression, don't go off half-cocked, and there's a lot of things related to firearms. When they say that I sold the business lock, stock, and barrel, that means the whole thing. This is the lock, this is the stock, and this is the barrel, okay? Now, once all this is done, you can take a name at your opponent and fire that. You see that? Do that with this flint. Want to see it again? Okay, watch. Now there's no ball in there. Let's see. Well, that flint's pretty well. Oh, I got to pull the frizzen back down. You gotta remember that. There, see? Neat, huh? Now I'll pass this around. Practice not pointing it at anyone. My sons, when they were young, he would come in the house and look at a display gun, a double-barrel shotgun standing in the corner. The person would say, is that loaded? And both kids would scream, yes. That way, nobody gets hurt. Let me say to you, all point it up in the air, not at your friends or at the ground. And do not cock it. Do that, please. Just look at it. Here, let me pull it back so you can see that. It is pulled back there. No, it's not frozen. There, don't pull the trigger. Just don't pull the trigger, it's now cocked. Okay, so it's a mechanical device, it's a tool. And let me observe to you, and this is a good rule of life, an idea is not responsible for the people who accept it or follow it or believe it. There are a lot of fruitcakes following every kind of damn idea you can possibly imagine. And statistically, shooting sports result in less injuries than baseball. Look it up, you know, under well-regulated rules. All right, now as to types of guns, they fall into certain broad categories. As I say, this is assuming you know nothing about them. If you all shot machine, maybe something. Why is that not open? It's like those plastic bags. Okay, rifles. A rifle is a shoulder arm. By the way, the reason they're called firearms is that in ancient times, they would hold a tube with a hole in it and the powder, and they'd take a piece of cloth or a string or something called a match and light it, and the hand that held the thing that lit it was called the firearm. Just like a bow arm is where you held the bow. And for many years, no one would use firearms. They were grossly dangerous, inaccurate, awful, and certainly would not replace swords, spears, and lances that people have been killing themselves with for hundreds of years. To be sure, a firearm is a weapon, and it is a deadly weapon. Make no mistake about that whatsoever. As long as you know that, nobody gets hurt. Okay, so rule one, don't point the gun at any, rule one, the gun is always loaded. Rule two, never point the gun at something you don't intend to shoot. Hi, I see a lot of friends here. If you follow those two rules judiciously, nobody gets hurt. There was a camp counselor once in NPR, it's reported, I don't know if this is apocryphal or not, and the lady liberal was interviewing him and said, or the camp director saying, Director, what kind of things you do at Camp Sunshine? He said, well, we have the usual swimming, horseback riding, archery, rifle. And she says, rifle? You're teaching those children to shoot guns? He says, well, madam, that's under expert instruction. They're perfectly safe. She says, but you're equipping them to be killers. He said, well, madam, you're equipped to be a prostitute, but you're not, are you? It's reported that was the end of the story. Okay. Now, they break down in long guns into basically rifles and shotguns. And the difference is a rifle fires a solid bullet and a shotgun fires shot. Shot are little tiny pieces of lead. Please note that you're pointing that gun right at the back of your friend's back. You can have it up in the air or something. I want you to practice doing this with this. Occasionally, for all of you know, there's a ball and powder stuck in that barrel. I checked, by the way, by looking at it with a high-intensity flashlight, but you could assume that. And if a ball gets stuck in a black powder barrel, it's necessary to take a screw device on a pole with a handle and screw it into the ball and pull it out. It's very complicated. Now, these black powder were the type of guns used all the way through the American Civil War. And ask the people at Gettysburg or Antietam and so on if they're really deadly weapons or not. But the ATF classifies these as non-guns. Okay, rifles consist of the following type designations. I can make this little giddy work. Single shot, that's the barrel, and it goes right into the back of the cartridge goes into the back of the chamber. Or all black powder weapons, or most of them, were double barrel black powder shotguns, but most of those are single shot. And when a soldier or a hunter fired it, you remember you poured out the black powder, then you put in the ball and you tap it down, you put something in the frizzle. If they fired it and proceeded too rapidly and poured black powder down there, there was still something smoldering in the barrel, it could go off and blow their head off. And that happened from time to time. So you're supposed to wait a few seconds before you do it. Okay, single shot, lever action. This is the gun that won the West, the Winchester 73, you know, that you crank like that. I've got pictures of all this to show you coming up. Pump action was an even later development in a rifle or shotgun where there's a pump at the front, you pull it back and forth, okay? Then you have semi-automatic. Now, I want you right now to learn the difference between automatic and semi-automatic. People are forever confusing them. Automatic means that it continues to fire as long as you hold the trigger down, like that. Semi-automatic means that it loads itself, but it only fires with each separate pull of the trigger. These are extremely important differences, and when people talk about assault weapons, generally they don't know what they're talking about, as I'm going to explain it to you. Okay, semi-automatic means that it fires every time you pull the trigger. Automatic means that it fires as long as you hold the trigger down, and those are unlawful as they can be. You can get a permit from the ATF, alcohol tobacco firearms. I don't have one, and I don't recommend anybody get one. They're about $200 per year. Last time I looked, and further, the feds have the right to come in your house anytime without a warrant to see if it's still there. So I just don't think I need one. Okay, a machine gun is a fully automatic weapon of war, fully automatic, that fires rifle bullets. A submachine gun, you may not know, fires pistol bullets. That's the distinction. Has this been around yet? Okay, did it get over here?
No.
Okay, the people over here need it as well. You see?
They have looked at it.
Who have it?
Okay. First you just took it.
Now remember, we're not going to point this at our friends, and we're not going to shoot our face off. You see the touch hole there at the bottom of the barrel. Okay, an assault rifle is a type of rifle that can be fired either fully automatic by flipping a switch or semi-automatic, one shot at a time. The problem is that the civilian so-called assault rifles, it's only an assault rifle, it's fully automatic. Get that through your head. So these things done supposedly with assault rifles are not truly assault rifles. What they are semi-automatic rifles that cosmetically look like an assault rifle. I'll show you some pictures of those. Okay, the next great category of firearms is shotguns, and those are also long guns.
Excuse me, what is a submachine gun?
A submachine gun fires pistol bullets, and a machine gun fires rifle bullets. And there's a big difference. Rifle bullets are generally far more powerful than pistol bullets. I'll be showing you some examples of that. In shotguns, you have the single shot, which was black powder, and then later when smokeless powder was invented and actual cartridges. See, there are a lot of developments in firearms. In fact, the history of firearms is really the history of civilization. And if it were not for firearms, we would not be sitting here having the right to talk about this today. Believe me, we've been conquered by a dozen different people. The cartridge is a self-contained unit that contains both the powder and the ball and an ignition system. I'll show you this in a minute. Double-barrel rifles are really beautiful. Those are the classic hunting gun. There are shotguns that can be lever action. This was made by Winchester in the last 2 centuries ago, 1870 or so. There can be pump action shotguns and there can be semi-automatic shotguns. Beretta makes a shotgun that can be operated either semi-automatic every time you pull the trigger or by flipping a switch to work as a pump gun. The idea being if the shot should fail in any way, the pumping, you could switch to for the fully semi-automatic failed, you could switch to the pumping and crank it slow. Okay, the third category, and the one that causes people really the most problem, is handguns. A handgun is a weapon that is designed to be fired from one hand, as opposed to putting it up to your shoulder, such as a shotgun or a rifle. And the earliest were probably, earliest type of firearms was probably a single shooting stick that contained black powder made out of wood, bamboo or something, and you had a touch hole and you had the powder in the back, you touched it and the whole thing blew up and you blew your hands off it. And they weren't terribly effective. Then came the single shot, and the difference between a rifle and a musket is necessary to understand. Flintlocks came, what you have there is a flintlock. Okay. Flintlocks were the firing system for both muskets and a rifle. A musket is a smooth bore. You can fire a round ball or a conical ball, the type of things. They still find them on Civil War battlefields, and you can buy them for very little money. But the smooth bore was highly inaccurate. You were fairly safe at 100 yards if someone was firing a musket at you with an unrifled barrel. Okay, then came a genius development. Rifling, or grooves cut, is grooves cut into the barrel itself. The high points are called lands and the recesses are called grooves. The lead ball, made of very soft material, is put into the gun, and the ball is somewhat larger than the barrel, or the hole in the chamber. And when it's fired, it squeezes the barrel into there, molding the lead into the grooves, and then forcing it out with a very, very powerful twist. And it is this twist that gives the accuracy and the range to a rifle, and is what gives it the name of rifle. So if you hear of a Brown Bess musket, or if you hear of a Civil War musket, that means a smooth bore, and a rifle means rifling. And this is true. Almost all pistols are rifled now. Pamela, is that right? That barrel? Let's see, is this rifle thing rifled? Okay. Yes, this is right. But never do that, by the way. Watch once more now. Remember, we've got the pan here with the powder, the touch hole going into the supply of black powder. And what this does is explodes. Very loud, very messy, very dirty. And a battlefield of the Civil War, I doubt that anyone could see closer than a few inches or feet away from it. It was so cloudy with gun smoke. Let's see if it works again. You have the dual, you face off, see? With luck, everything goes right, the fire ignites the powder in the pan, it goes through the touch hole and ignites the gun. Okay, that same mechanism was used in the flintlock rifle, which was in use at the beginning of the Civil War, and then a huge development came